Hello, and thank you for joining us for part one of our virtual tour of Willa Cather's childhood home. My name is Rachel Olson, and I'll be leading you through the house. To start, we will move from the entryway here into the parlor, and I'll tell you a little bit about how the Cathers made their way all the way from Virginia to Nebraska. Willa Cather's family came to Nebraska in 1883, so Cather was just under 10 years old, and they originally moved in with Cather's paternal grandparents, William and Caroline Cather, who had already moved to Nebraska to homestead. Charles and Mary Virginia Cather brought their 4 children, Cather's maternal grandmother, Rachel Boak, and a hired girl named Margie Anderson, and they stayed with Cather's grandparents until 1884, when Charles decided to move the family into town. At that point, Charles stopped farming and he opened a title and insurance office downtown, not far from this house that they decided to rent. This house was built in 1879, and the Cathers moved in, as I mentioned, in 1884. And this is where they lived for about 20 years before Willa's parents moved into a larger home a few blocks north that we refer to as the Cather second home, and we also run it as a bed and breakfast. Willa Cather lived here until 1890, when she went off to college at the University of Nebraska. And after the family moved out, this became apartments, and that's how it remained until 1960, when a man named Dr. Wilbur Bennett purchased this home for his wife Mildred. Mildred Bennett is the person we credit with starting the Willa Cather Foundation in 1955. And once she acquired the home in 1960, she began work on restoring the home. She had help from Willa Cather's sisters, Jessica and Elsie, as well as Cather's lifelong friend, Carrie Miner Sherwood, who you'll hear about later on when we visit the Miner house. It took about 7 years for Mildred to finish restoring the home. She opened the house for tours in 1967, and in 1972, this house was declared a national landmark. Now, as we make our way through, you'll notice that there are artifacts and pieces in the house that belong to the Cather family, and there are also pieces that are just of the period. Here you can see photographs of Cather's paternal grandparents, William and Caroline Cather. Cather's Uncle George and Aunt Frances also had moved to Webster County many years before Charles and Mary Virginia Cather brought their family. And I should mention that once they moved into this house here on Cedar Street, 3 more children were born in the home. So there were 7 Cather children total. You can see the corner shelf, or we know it as a whatnot shelf, that belonged to the Cathers, as well as the blue embroidered pillow. This marble top table and chair belonged to the Cathers as well. Sadly, this very charming stove is a period piece. It's not the original. However, they would have had a stove like this. Cather used the interiors of this house in some of her fiction later on in her writing career. In The Song of the Lark, Taya Kronberg, the main character of the story, is sick with pneumonia as a child, and in the start of the novel, she's laying in the parlor looking at the stove, and that scene is modeled after this room. This bedroom back here was Charles and Mary Virginia Cather's room. The furnishings in it did belong to them, with the exception of the area rug. And there was an adjoining bedroom that was used as a nursery for the 3 youngest Cather children. This was a very modest house compared to the home that they moved away from in Virginia. So it must have been quite a change for the Cathers to come here. Charles Cather raised sheep in Virginia. And while we don't know exactly why they moved to Nebraska when they did, we do know that Charles lost his barn in a very suspicious fire, and that may have prompted their move. Next, we'll go into the dining room, which would have been a busy, bustling place, thanks to Charles Cather's later career with his insurance office. The restaurants in town would have been about a mile away near the train station, and so it was much more convenient for Charles to bring his clients home for lunch. Now, this table and chair set are period pieces, but there are some items in this room that we can assume were at least very useful to the Cathers or had some sentimental value, because they bothered to pack them up and haul them on their cross-country train ride from Virginia. So the first item I'll point out is this very adorable hand-carved high chair, which was Willa Cather's high chair. And since Willa Cather was the firstborn, we can assume that many or all of the Cather children sat in that chair at one point. And then here in this hutch, we have Mary Virginia Cather's china collection. Cather packed this up in old Confederate money to transport it on the train, since by the 1880s, of course, Confederate money had no value. And then here you can see the wallpaper pattern, which is not an exact replica. However, it was chosen because Carrie Minor Sherwood said it was similar to the paper that was originally hung in this room. And Mildred Bennett was able to peel back many layers of paper to help make her choice as well. And for the next installment of our Cather tour, we will visit Grandma Rachel's bedroom. Thank you for joining me on this first part of the tour. My name is Rachel Olson, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the National Willa Cather Center. And if you'd like to support the preservation of sites like this or educational programs, please visit www.willacather.org for information on how to do so. Thank you.